This podcast tutorial is brought to you by the Mack Talks.
Hi, and welcome to our tutorial. Today we're going to set up a podcast for two guests. The first thing to point out is that this setup will be specifically tendered to the Zoom F4 multi-track field recorder as our interface. Also, in this tutorial, we'll be using a power strip located on the top of our demonstration table to power our devices. With that being said, let's jump into the equipment we'll be using for this setup. First off, we have one Zoom F4 field recorder. Along with it, we have one Zoom AC adapter for continuous power and one standard USB-A to Mini B cable. Second, we have the Pile 4-channel stereo headphone amplifier, one Pile AC adapter, and 1 foot-long 3.5mm auxiliary cable. Third, we have two Marantz MPH-1000 condenser microphones and two XLR male to XLR female 6-foot cables. Fourth, we have two Gator Frameworks tabletop microphone stands, two shock mounts, and two 16-inch boom arms. However, we will not be using the boom poles for the setup. Finally, we have two One Audio Studio headphones, two 6-foot male-to-male 3.5mm auxiliary cables, three 1 1/4-inch stereo plug to 3.5mm stereo jack adapters. First, we'll need to power the Zoom F4. We'll do this by gently plugging the AC adapter plug into the labeled DC in port located on the right side of the Zoom F4. We'll then power the Zoom F4 by holding the power button at the bottom right of the face. Next, we'll set up the Pile amplifier by again plugging in the AC adapter and connecting the other end into the DC in port located on the back of the device. Once powered, we can plug in all of the 3/4-inch adapters. Next, we will connect the Pile amplifier to the Zoom F4 with a foot-long 3.5mm auxiliary cable from the port labeled Input on the Pile to the port labeled Sub Out located on the right side of the F4. We'll finish the headphone setup later on in the video. Now that we've finished powering up the devices, we'll move on to setting up the microphones and the microphone stands. We'll start off by placing all of the microphone stands on top of the table. Next, we'll start the assembly. Take the mic shock mount and screw it onto the top of the microphone stand. Once assembled, we can place the microphone into the shock mount. We want to make sure the polar pattern icon is facing the speaker for the best possible audio pickup. Next, we'll grab the XLR cable and connect the female XLR end of the cable into the microphone XLR jack located on the bottom of the microphone. Then we'll connect the male XLR end to the input labeled 1 on the left side of the Zoom F4. For the sake of this tutorial, we'll connect two microphones, but you can set up to 4 microphones with the Zoom F4. Before we get into adjusting levels, we need to make sure that we have an SD card installed to record to. First, we'll open the back plate and insert the SD card in the slot labeled 1. Then we'll close the back panel and tighten. We'll cover formatting later in the video. Once we're done with that, we can move on to working with the interface. The interface is located on the front of the Zoom F4, which consists of an LCD screen, a selection encoder, a menu key, a headphone volume knob, option key, output key, track keys labeled 1 through 4, status indicators, and track gain knobs. Now that we've familiarized ourselves with the layout of the F4, let's get into formatting the SD card located in slot 1. By default, the LCD will display the home screen. To get to the formatting window, click the menu key. Using the selection encoder, we'll scroll down to select the SD card menu by pressing down on the selection encoder. In the SD card menu, scroll down to Format and click the selection encoder. While now inside the Format menu, click down on SD1. You'll be prompted with a message double-checking if you're sure if you want to format. Scroll the selection encoder to select Yes. Give it a moment until prompted with the message done. Okay, we are ready to move forward with connecting the headphones to the Zoom F4. Going back to the 3/4-inch adapters plugged into the Pile amplifier, we need to plug the auxiliary cords into the adapter. The other end goes directly into the headphones on the right ear. Now we can move into arming the F4 for recording. We'll start off by hitting track keys 1 and 2 on the face of the F4. We'll know the tracks are live by the red light indication. Now we should be getting a signal reading for both tracks 1 and 2. We can get a more detailed reading of the level meters page by scrolling to the right with the selection encoder. As you can see, we are getting a signal from both tracks. If we scroll once more to the right, we'll be able to see a decibel meter with levels for both track 1 and 2. There are also readings below for both sub and main out. but that won't be important for this setup. At this point, we want to get our talent involved. Ask them to have a conversation at the microphones to help you adjust levels. For the best audio, we want each person's dialogue to fit in between the -12 to -6 decibel range. If the levels are too high or too low, you can adjust the gain for each track individually. We've found that setting the gain knob to about halfway works for most situations. Now we can move on to adjusting headphone levels. For this setup, since we've previously connected the amplifier to the F4, we should be getting a signal in both headphones. You can adjust the levels for each channel by adjusting the knobs located on the Pile amplifier. This portion of the setup is entirely subjective and is up to the talent to determine what is a comfortable level for them. Now that we've set our levels on the F4 and headphones, we can go ahead and start recording. With this SD card, we have just under 8 hours of record time, which is plenty space for a podcast with 2 tracks. Keep in mind, as you increase the number of tracks, so will the file size. To start recording our session, we simply press the red record button on the bottom right. To stop recording, we hit the square stop button to the left of the record button. Once you've recorded your session, you can make a copy of the SD card on your computer using either a built-in memory card reader or an external memory card reader. And that wraps up our basic podcast setup tutorial. Happy podcasting, and thank you for watching.